carry them at Walmart. And
Five.
probably at Dillon's too, I don't know.
Volkers is coming at me.
I don't know what those
And
are.
so this gentleman over here, he says, you know, my wife don't know that a Volker is the name of an airplane. And he said, 9 these Volkers were flying Messerschmitts. He didn't pick up.
No.
These Volkers
Yeah, like
were flying Messerschmitts.
Yeah,
He thought Volker was the name of the airplane. Oh, well. What's that thing?
Huh?
What's that thing?
That's my phone.
it's a robot.
Uh-oh, to be...
A robot.
And this, well, this is a little tripod.
Yeah, I can see that, but I didn't know what that thing was. What's this thing back here?
This?
Uh-huh.
That goes to that, it's microphone. Yeah, it's the microphone part. So it's the other, this is like the receiver.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I'm transmitting over to that.
Yeah.
Well,
I wanted to get, you always tell me all these neat stories, I just want to get some of them on tape.
I don't understand.
He wants to have some of them recorded so he can play them back
Oh,
and
okay.
laugh a second time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe a third. Yeah.
Maybe a third.
We should have put it on early because I forgot all I said.
So what is the lineup here? You were first. I mean, so there's this. You're a sheriff. You're a colonel. You're a judge. You're a lawyer. You're a plastics manufacturer. What happens first? Take me through the chronological order of this,
Oh, well.
and then please fill me in any details I didn't know. Like, were also you were also a cowboy maybe, or
No, I
or president
was
of the United States, and we didn't know about that.
I was just a lucky guy. That's all there is to it.
I wouldn't say you were lucky growing up.
Well, that's a different story.
Yeah.
I got into the plastic business simply because we was making wheel bearings out of plastic, out of nylon. And this plastic dealer came to me and he said, why don't you go to anybody that's got wheels and tell them that uses wheels in their product, and tell them that you can make this bearing that'll replace that old bronze bearing that costs several dollars, and this would sell for cents, like 90 cents. And so there's a lawnmower company in town, and I went in and talked to the president many times, and he says, okay, I'm tired of you coming in, we'll do one of two things. I'll either run you off or we'll buy the product. So he called his chief foreman in and he says, test this sample bearing that he's gave us. So he took the bed of a lawnmower, because he made lawnmowers there, Air Capital Manufacturing, and two of the wheels on one side he left the old bronze bushings, and two of the wheels on the other side he put on plastic. Then before they can tow it, his foreman said, no, that's not really a good test. Let's take one out on the bronze, and then we'll take one out on the plastic. So they took the one out on the bronze first and got on the turnpike and drove 40, 50 miles an hour and came around and turned back. Well, the wheels would wobble, you know, because bronze just wore. So then we equipped the lawnmower with these plastic bearings. They were nylon, deliquescent, and ran it down the road and come back, and boy, they were just as tight on those hubs. And so that shifted. He completely got rid of the bronze bearings and then started in using these plastic bearings. And I don't know how many we was producing. We was running 3 shifts a day, 7 days a week.
Wow.
And then some of these machines that I had were as big as a railroad car. I mean, they were huge, and they were like a hypodermic needle. The tube of the needle was electrically heated, thermostat controlled. You could set it whatever temperature you want. And it had a hopper up here that you filled with plastic, and the piston that went down the cylinder would back up. And when it backed up, then plastic would fall down into the tube and they'd push it forward. And if one shot wouldn't cover it, then you could set the machine that it'd back up and take another drop of plastic and then push it forward. And then that tremendous hydraulic pressure would, when that plastic was liquid, would push that hot plastic into dies. Machine shop, we had our own machine shop, but they made the dies that we used on the machines. And all we'd do is sit there and run them all day long and have a kid working each shift. And one guy was kind of goofy. He was playing how quick he could get his hand out of the way. He didn't get his hand out of the way one time. And it went completely shut, crushed his hand something terribly, but then worse than that, it shot that red hot plastic all over his hands. And when we got him to the hospital, they were really talking about severing his hand, cutting his hand off. But anyway, the hand doctor that came in was a specialist, and I think he only lost one digit. I don't know which one. And you just got to pay attention when you're working around machinery.
Yeah.
How old were you when you were doing the plastics business?
Huh?
How old were you when you were doing the plastics?
Oh, I was in my 20s.
Yeah.
I wasn't an old guy.
Did you come to own it?
Huh?
You owned the company?
Oh, yes, lock, stock, and barrel.
Yeah.
I don't
Just
want
you
no
or you,
partners.
somebody else?
I don't want no partners.
Oh, wow.
Who'd you buy it from?
I made it.
You started it?
Yeah, I
So I don't
started.
understand
I
how
started with a little machine, and I had the air mold laboratory going. You know, making the molds.
Okay.
And I got in this little machine to make some components. It was an injection machine, though, but it was a small one.
Like the hot injection.
And the components were the snaps for the end of the tubes when the hearing aids weren't like this, where you had a tube that went up and over the ear and down back. Mm-hmm. Well, it made the snaps for those. And then the guy came in and he had a transit, and he knew that I had an injection machine, and he made his own dies. He was a tool and die maker. And he says, "What do you charge me to run 1,000 of these?" And I says, "Well, I don't know, I'll figure out something." So we came to a mutual understanding, and I ran 1,000 of them. Well, the next thing that I knew, here comes somebody else wanting some stuff. Well, I had to get bigger equipment. And then a guy from Coleman called and said, "Why don't you come over and talk to us? We make a lot of plastic stuff."
Yeah.
And so I did, and Coleman was at it, and we added more machines and got bigger and bigger. At one time I had 60 employees on each shift, 3 shifts a day, and had more trouble than Carter had pills. It was terrible. We hired people that were more on the poor side to try and help them. But a lot of them were alcoholics, and it'd be nothing for them to just quit in the middle of a shift. And they'd call me and I'd have to go down there and run it. So, and then we got some old boy from the government came by and said, "Why don't you get in on government contracts?" "Oh, okay, how do I do that?" Well, he showed me how I do it. And then we started in making the plastic butt of the AR-15 and M16 military rifle. And boy, they used a lot of those. But anyway,
What was the name of the company?
Midwest Plastics. But I kept the two separated. Hodge Laboratories was not part of Midwest Plastics. So when I sold Midwest Plastics off, I kept Hodge Laboratories.
So I don't understand how you got into the business in the first place. Like, how did you get that first injection machine?
Well,
I feel
I
like
told you I had
is
this.
sneaky.
This guy said, "Why don't you buy this little machine and you can make the plastic ends that you're buying for nothing." I mean, plastic.
What were you
was
buying plastic ends for?
the tubes for when the hearing aid fit
Yeah.
under your clothes and the tube went up over the ear.
Were you making hearing aids?
No, I wasn't making hearing aids. I was making the molds, and the tubing at the end of the tube took that plastic clip, and that plastic clip snapped onto the amplifier
Okay.
of the hearing aid, which was underneath your clothing.
So you were already making the tubes. When did you start making the tubes?
I did, and I bought them.
What were you making?
I bought the tubes.
I see where you're going with this. Just going in circles.
I bought the tubing
Yeah.
in rolls. I don't know, maybe 2,500 feet.
Yeah.
And then I would cut the tube to length,
Yeah.
put a piece of solder wire down inside the tube, bend it to shape, right or left,
Yeah.
and then we had put them in a sandbox.
Yeah. A mold.
It was a box that you put sand in that heated up, and we had it set at a given temperature, and then we immersed these in that sand and left them there for I don't know how long. And then when we took them out, we cooled them off and pulled the wire out, and they were permanently molded.
Yeah.
And that's how that got done.
So you were.
That was
making
my
the molds.
invention.
You were making the molds that fit people's ear to their hearing aid.
Yeah.
So how'd you get
Among
into
other things.
How did you get into that? I'm wondering how you first got into this business, into this.
Well, I'll
plastic
tell you,
business.
I worked for a company. It was W.D. Clark Laboratories in Los Angeles.
Okay. This is when you were living in
And
California.
he had shifts that you came in on. The day shift finished the molds so that they could be mailed out the same day. The other shift, which I predominantly worked on, was the molds would come in, we'd open them up, we'd make a casting of them. What we'd do is we'd wax them to a flat plate and then put a round plate over them and then fill that plate with stone. That's a real strong plaster. And then we'd turn them over and pry the little ear molds out and then fill them with plastic. And that's how we made them. And how I actually got into it, I've never been able to work for the other guy. Never. Never.
Sounds like a common trait.
I started this laboratory. I was in California and Beltone Hearing Aid Company here in town asked me to come back and start a laboratory for them. And their pay was generous. So I came back to Wichita and started a laboratory for them. And then I think it was his nephew, Buell Kent and Ray Rice were the two owners. But they said, well, Ray, you need to teach somebody in case you get sick or hurt. Because I wasn't telling nobody nothing. I didn't tell them the formula of the mixture of the plastic or anything. And so they convinced me that I should have a backup. And I got backed up all right. Yeah, I backed right out the door. So I said, I'm tired of this crap. I'm never going to work for anybody again. And I called my aunt, Aunt Betty, and I said, and I hate to ask you this, but I need $500 to start a business. And so I think she came to Wichita and gave me 500, and I started a laboratory on 500 in my garage. And then I repaid her at $50 a month, and I paid her $50 a month for 12 months, so she made some profit on it. And it just outgrew the garage. I mean, just more and more people came. Of course, I did a whittle deal on the other manufacturers. See, they were like charging $2.75 for a regular, so I charged $1.50. Well, when you cut the price, you know what happens. You get business. And it just and then from that little plastic machine, you know, good grief. And then we got two of those great big Natcos, a Natco 300 and a Natco 400, 200 and some odd $1,000 a piece. And I was producing grills for air conditioners, and anything that you wanted, we could make for you. We'd make the tools. And Vern Strong, you probably knew him. He was in charge of the machinist in the machine shop. I had Bridgeport mills, lathes, surface grinders. I had everything. And so I sold it. I was going to law school.
Why on earth did you decide to go to law school?
I got rid of it. And when I became an attorney, well, at the same time, see, I hired people to run the laboratories. And Jim Hansel was the boss of the laboratory, if you remember him. And then I became a deputy sheriff.
Right.
And
you decided you'd be on the other side of the law for a while.
Oh,
you
I had
better.
How old were you when you sold the plastics?
Earl was always playing tricks, I swear. He was always, we had we called it a sump. These machines, as they slid across, opening and closing, they ejected a small amount of oil onto each of these four steel bars that the platen ran, where you bolted the dies to, ran back and forth for opening and closing. And that oil would accumulate in a pan, and it would flow into one of these pits. These pits were about 10 foot deep, I guess. And it oily, you know, oily water. And so my uncle's a jokester. So we hired a new kid, and he said, showing him things that he had to do, and he says, now that seems to be stopped up. Why don't you jump down in there and unstop it? And he did. Twiddle the kid's head. Oh, well. And then we took a forklift, and we put this guy's motorcycle on the forklift, and we lifted it up and put it on the roof. Then we took the forklift back inside and shut off the propane on both valves. You know, he could have turned them on. So it was fun watching him trying to figure out how to get that thing down. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
So how old were you when you sold the company, the plastics company?
How old do you think I was, Mom? 20s?
No.
No?
You were 29 when we married.
Well, I had the plastic company when we married.
Right. But when you sold it, you had it several years before, after we were married.
You had it when Vern lost the election
Yeah, Vern worked for you for a little bit.
Talking about Vern Miller,
Yes.
right? The lawyer. But wasn't Vern going to law school?
Well, that's
Yeah, I
We're,
went with,
we're, we're
that's
coming.
where
We're
you-
coming back to that.
I went
That's
with
where
him.
yeah.
So,
how'd you meet Vern?
You married Marcy when you were 29, and then and then you were married for at least a few more years before he sold the plastics company.
Yes. Well, yeah. I mean, I think even Ryan was born before he sold the plastic company, and we'd been married 7 years before he was born.
What year was Ryan born?
66.
Oh, yeah.
And we were married in 59.
So my favorite story of yours is how you because after all the work that I did to get into law school, you like accidentally went to law school, which is the most ridiculous story.
Yeah, I accidentally went to law school and started law school the same night I went.
Because you were just taking Vern, right?
Well, it was interesting. I was captain of the road patrol, and Vern says we're going to call all the boys out because Dan Canfield, who was head of the Wichita Crime Commission, a do-nothing lying bunch of groups at that time. And they're going to burn down this grocery store. And Vern says, oh, we're going to get all out there and hide and catch them. Well, I had laid many times mosquito and flea and every type of an infected thing. None of Dan's stories came up. You know, he was just a blowhard. Oh, my information is this and my information is that. And so I told Vern, you can fire me. I don't care. I ain't going out there and laying in the bushes no more. And as usual, nobody showed up to burn down the store, so it was another false tale. But I was home sleeping nice. And so the next day, Marcy didn't like this too well. Vern came in and said, drive me to law school. I need you to drive me. I was up all night. Well, I knew he was up all night. And so I said, okay. So he flopped down in the back seat and I drove down to law school in
Where was this at?
Oklahoma City.
Yeah, that's right.
And I pulled in the parking lot and said, I'll catch a movie and I'll be back and pick you up when you get out of law school. And he says, no, come in with me. So I went in with him, and his first class was criminal law. And it caught my intrigue and my interest so much that I just said to Vern, I'm sitting there in class with him. He says, gee, I think I'd like to be an attorney too. So at recess, he took me down to the dean's office and introduced me to the dean, and he says, if you let him in law school, he can help me drive. And the dean asked me if I could start tonight. So I'm in law school.
This is in Norman, right?
No, Oklahoma City Law School's in
It's not
Oklahoma
OU.
City.
It's Oklahoma City University.
you.
University School of Law. And so then pretty soon the dean called me down to his office and he says, Ray, he says, I forgot. You have to take the law school admission test. And I said, Dean, I'm in school. Why should I take it? And he says, don't argue with me. He says, the bosses of the school said that each student must take the law school admission test to get into law school. So I said, okay, I'll go down. Had to go all the way down to Norman, Oklahoma to take it. And it cost me $40. $40 back then. My gosh, I only made $30 a week. Well, anyway, the very first question, and I'll never forget it, was what was the most motivating force during the reconnaissance period? A, B, C, D. I sat there and I thought for a while, and we're in a big class, maybe there's 400 kids trying to take the test. And I said, I'm already in law school and I don't think anybody kicked me out because I'm making B's. And so I just, I didn't even read the questions. I just checked A, B, C, or D. So then to show off that I was, or maybe still am, I don't know.
I know.
I got up in the middle of all of this humongous set of kids. And I said, that's the easiest test I ever took, and walked out. You could hear them gasping for breath. Oh well, so then there's a day of reckoning. The dean called me down into his office and he said, Ray, I just want you to know this. Now see, I didn't know anything about my score or anything. He says, Ray, I want you to know that this school has some standards. I don't know what you're talking about. And he says, well, you made the lowest score ever recorded. And of course, is that good? Well, anyway, he says that's interesting because I also got in the same class a man that made the highest score that ever recorded. So we'll see. And I told him I didn't think that test was any good. What difference does it make during the reconnaissance period? That might have been back in the dinosaur ages, as far as I know. So at the end of the first semester, I'm flying straight B's, and he's in the D level. So he goes on probation. At the end of the next semester, he's gone. He's effed. He's below standard.
Vern, are we? When you say he, you don't
know Vern.
You mean the other guy who got the high score?
Yes.
Yeah, that was not Vern Miller. He's average like me, I don't get the highest and I don't get the lowest, but anyway. So the other guy went bye-bye and I was still in class and I just continued on until I graduated. And Ryan was a baby when we went down when she came down to Oklahoma City to the graduation, where I got my law degree. And then I had to come up to Kansas, and the first thing Kansas notified me when I registered and paid all the fees is, oh, you've got to take our test. Huh? I just took the law school admission test. I passed all the tests that the school gave me. Now you want to give me more tests? Yes. So the state administered a bunch of tests. Well, I'll tell you a little secret. I did a law review course that they recommended. It was for people to prepare them for the law school, for the admission test to the state to become an attorney. And they had a question on there that was one that we studied. And I felt real good about that because I knew the exact answer for it. Well, anyway, I passed that and Vern passed it, and Vern became what? Attorney General?
He was the Attorney General.
Yeah, he became Attorney General, and I became one of those undercover investigators. Yeah, I became it. Vern could have 3 men that reported directly to him, and they were really special agents under the KBI. But you did not report to the KBI chief. You just reported to Vern. Now, I didn't do nothing. I mean, what was there for me to do? The police took care of things in the city, and what did I do? I don't think I did nothing.
Well, I wasn't with you, so I don't know what you did.
Oh, well, and you know, Vern jumped out of the trunk and all this, and that, and the other. Man, those were the fun times.
So before he was, this was before he was Attorney General?
Yeah.
Vern was a
Sheriff.
year ahead of me, and he graduated before me.
Okay.
And then he came up and passed the bar, and I think he became Attorney General.
Yeah.
Well, not right out of law school.
Huh?
What did he do first after law school?
I think he was still sheriff.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, he was still sheriff. And then he ran for Attorney General on the off year of the sheriff, so that if he lost, you know, he is still sheriff.
yeah.
And he won, so he resigned from his position.
And you became sheriff?
Huh? No, I never became sheriff. I was never interested, really. As I look at it, I was not really interested. I was making $330 a month in the sheriff's office. And there's just not a lot of money in police work. Now there is if you get in a professional level, the FBI, KBI. And then what else happened, Marcy?
Well,
Well, apparently you still had the lab to help your income.
Oh
right?
yeah, I always kept the lab. I didn't.
when you quit when you graduated from law school, you were still in the sheriff's office, and then you quit the sheriff's office and went with Dwyer and
Yeah, Malone and Dwyer.
And
And
the paper wrote up a big article about you quitting the sheriff's office for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And you said, I quit the sheriff's office because I went to law school to get a degree to earn some decent money, and that's what I want to do. I mean, the paper tried to make some
Yeah, like,
big deal out of it.
like Vern wouldn't support me if I was running for sheriff and all this, that, and the other, and it was not that good of a deal. But candidly, if I thought I could have won, I might have ran for sheriff. But there's no way I could win.
So you were a deputy.
Oh yeah, I was a captain of road patrol.
Okay.
Road patrol was the cars on the road, air patrol. Lake Afton had a boat patrol. And did I tell you the story of the Ski King?
The what?
Oh, you've got to hear this.
Let's hear it.
Now this is the truth, and Marcy will verify it.
Marcy, we're gonna need some backup from you here.
We
We don't know if things are gonna get exaggerated or
No,
not.
this is the truth.
we had a sheriff's patrol boat